Welcome to Kekaimalu, Swanson 42. Kekaimalu is 12.75 metres long. She displaces 13 tonnes and has a draft of 1.75 metres. Her hull is solid fiberglass. She has a canoe stern with a centre cockpit and an integrated keel. Her history begins with three Australian boat builders and yacht designers of Norwegian descent, the Swanson brothers, Ron, Ken and Jim, who in the last quarter of the 20th century built solid classic timber and then fiberglass yachts and hulls. Her medium to heavy displacement and balanced hull design has a reputation for being sea-kindly, comfortable and for sailing exceptionally well, being fast and balanced for a 13-ton boat, even in lighter winds. Built over 15 years and completed in 2000, Kekaimalu was a labour of love and has had two fastidious owners. She's been described by many as one of the best examples of a Swanson 42 ever built. As you approach her, you notice the hull, which was freshly painted in December 2021. Accentuating her classic lines, which are often compared to a Halberg Rassi. Her teak gunnels have only recently been varnished to a mirror finish, and like all the teak on the boat, has been lovingly maintained. Her deck was completely refurbished in 2021. It's spacious and uncluttered, and there's plenty of room on the foredeck to store a tender and passage, with enough space to walk around unhampered. Going to the bow, we have an original Manson CQR 50-pound anchor, which has performed faultlessly. The Muir anchor winch has a rope and chain combination gypsy. On the deck there's a foot switch to raise or lower the anchor and another switch in the forepeak. The 80 metres of 10mm anchor chain is directed aft and down via a stainless steel pipe, keeping the weight aft of the bow. The genoa and staysail are both mounted onto Goyo furling systems, and the staysail is heavily constructed with a padded luff for maintaining a flat sail when furled in heavy wind. Kekaimalu has excellent airflow due to 4 good dorade vents and a number of hatches, which also provide abundant light. The mast wall and granny bars provide a secure position when working at the mast. The mast and boom were unstepped and removed in 2019. They were sandblasted and repainted, and wiring installed for new B&G instruments and radar. The mainsail is constructed of Bainbridge cruise laminate fabric and has 7 full battens with Ronston RCB cars, making it very easy to hoist or lower. The boom is supported by a conventional topping lift as well as a Selden rod kicker rigid vang with a convenient control line leading to the cockpit. On the coach house, there are 2 100-watt flexible solar panels. Moving to the stern, we find 2 more solar panels mounted on adjustable brackets. This provides a total of 400 watts of solar generation, and all panels are controlled by Victron Bluetooth controllers. Here we also find the lazarette hatch, which houses 2 large gas bottles and has plenty of room for storage. The cockpit area is snug at sea, but also large and comfortable. In 2019, a new bimini frame was built from stainless steel and new covers and clears made. The shades and clears can be configured in many different ways to keep out sun, rain or spray. Kekaimalu is built for short-handed or even single-handed sailing, and so much can be controlled from the cockpit. In 2019, as previously mentioned, new B&G instruments and radar were installed. The pilot house is a very practical space, which has many uses, as extra berths for crew or guests, as a place to do your watch, or for solo sailors who need to rest while still remaining close to the cockpit. These lee cloths keep you safe and cozy. Kekaimalu was built to exacting standards and fitted with grade A teak throughout. The saloon's U-shaped design is spacious even by modern standards and can seat up to 8 people comfortably, the seats having been upgraded in 2019 with new foam and leather covers. Lee cloths provide more sleeping space for guests or crew. Kekaimalu has accommodation for 8. In the saloon there is abundant storage behind cushions and under seats. Storage is essential on passage making, and Kekaimalu has been built with this in mind, making her an ideal cruiser. Through the saloon we come to the forepeak. Here we find a Dometic 12,000 BTU air conditioner. It's a heat pump model that exchanges energy from seawater to either heat or cool the cabin. It's an extremely efficient system with a soft start option added, so the current draw on startup is okay for a 12-volt battery system. Also added is the optional soundproof enclosure on the compressor to minimise noise. It vents into the saloon and cools or warms the entire boat. Further in, on the port side, we have more storage. These are deep cupboards and drawers, and their interiors, like the rest of the boat, have been beautifully finished. Here at our feet we have the transducer for speed and depth, and on the starboard side we have the main head with a Javsco quiet flush system. Again, there's loads of storage. And an integrated shower. In the forepeak we have what every sailor longs for but rarely finds in a boat, a dedicated workshop. Again, there's plenty of storage, so rare on boats these days. Additional to the main anchor chain, there's a hawser hole outlet on the deck above for a secondary anchor rode. Here you can store sails and fenders, tools and spare parts. As we move through the saloon, we find under the floorboards grey water tanks, and 2 tanks that hold 400 litres of fresh water in total. There's also the mast support structure, which is a heavy galvanised steel box section frame that's continuous right around the hull and deck, forming a support structure for the mast and chain plates. Now we head towards the nav station on the starboard side of the boat. The nav station is the command centre of any boat, and in 2019 the instruments were upgraded and the nav station modernised. Here we find the electrical switchboard panels that provide 12-volt power, the control panel for the diesel genset, the control panel for the inverter which supplies up to 2000 watts of 240-volt power when away from shore. The inverter is situated on the starboard side of the saloon. There are also digital and analog meters that display system voltage, current consumption in amps, and total amps still available in both the house battery bank and the engine starting battery. Handy to the companionway, there's also a VHF radio with dual channel AIS receiver and a high frequency transceiver that will communicate across oceans. There is storage for maps and logbooks, and nearby a handy drawer for pens, paper and bits and pieces. Below that, a Eutectic fridge that was fully refurbished and regassed in 2019. The portside cabin has again been stunningly finished. It can sleep one or two. Beneath the bed, we find the battery bank, 3 125 amp-hour AGM batteries. The access is easy. There's a good hanging locker. The interior, as you can see, has been beautifully finished, and good deep drawers. This boat has excellent ventilation and really good access to the motor. This is just one of 3 access points. Here we can access the manual pump system and the main NMEA bus system to the binnacle. In the saloon, we have access to the front of the motor, the electrics and the main earthing posts. We can access the heat exchanger and the engine start battery, as well as a Bosch 120 amp alternator. On the port side, we have access to the pumps for emptying the engine oil and transmission oil, the main battery selector switch, the control and battery selector for the wind generator, and the diesel fuel injector pump and lines. Moving aft, we have access to the freshwater tank selector system, the freshwater pump, and the blue accumulator tank. All freshwater on the boat is filtered through a 1 micron carbon filter. The freshwater system also has 2 valves that, when switched, allow fresh water to be used to flush the primary engine, the genset, and all seawater lines aboard the boat. We also have easy access to the fuel filter and the seawater strainer, which feeds into a manifold system well above the waterline. Nearby is a panel with a ship or shore 240 volt power selector and a tank water and fuel gauge. Now to the galley, and what a galley it is. The 2-burner gas stove has seen many a good meal. The galley has pressurised hot and cold water, a seawater faucet with a foot pump, and an additional freshwater hand pump as a backup. It is very handy to have 2 deep sinks. And again, there is a good deal of storage for food, plates and glasses, and plenty of lockers, and good drawers. The Eutectic freezer is large and can be used as both fridge and freezer. Just inside the saloon on the port side is a compressor for the freezer. The wet locker is situated next to the galley. On the starboard side of the companionway, there is a switch for the anchor winch and a stick for the manual pump. On the port side, a locker for the washboards. On the way to the aft cabin, we have a second head, which was removed and has been used as storage, but which can be easily reinstalled if required. The aft cabin is a light-filled and comfortable space with a queen-size bed. Under the bed there is a Kubota diesel genset with a 150 amp output at 12 volts. As well as access to the quadrant and emergency hand tiller. There's a desk with storage underneath, a good-sized chest of drawers, again beautifully finished, and the hatch above provides wonderful ventilation in all weather conditions as it sits inside the cockpit enclosure. Last but not least, there's a good-sized hanging locker with storage underneath. So there she is, Kekaimalu. Will she be your next boat?